An old house, a moonless night, and human footprints appearing right in the middle of the attic. No one had stepped inside, but the prints were there.
In 1983, when financial hardship forced the Hartwell family to return to their ancestral home in Millbrook, a town nearly forgotten, 8-year-old Emma began witnessing strange phenomena. Subtle at first, but quickly escalating. Nearly 20 years later, Emma's personal journal would reveal chilling truths about an ancient ritual, trapped spirits, and the fateful night when the curse was finally awakened. If you're brave enough, put on your headphones, stay completely still, and follow us as we retrace every step in the dark. This is the Millbrook Curse, a story told by the only one who survived it.
Do you believe in spirits trapped on land? Spirits that will never forgive? Today, I'm going to tell you a story that changed my entire life. A story that started when I was just 8 years old. It was 1983, and my family had just hit an unavoidable turning point. My father, Michael Hartwell, used to be a bank clerk in Chicago. After 15 years living there, something happened. He got laid off. 3 months without income. Mounting debt. Then one day, a phone call came from rural Iowa. My grandfather, a man I had never met, had passed away. He left behind an old farmhouse. For my parents, it wasn't a choice. It was the only way out. And so we packed everything and headed back to Millbrook. I remember dozing off in the back seat of our 1979 Buick, my head resting on Mom's shoulder. She held me tight, like she was trying to shield me from something. Through half-lidded eyes, I saw golden cornfields rush by on both sides, the wind hitting the windows with a long sigh, like memories too old to speak. "Are you sure about this?" Mom asked. For the third time that day, Dad kept his eyes on the road, gripping the steering wheel. "We need a fresh start," he replied. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Even as a kid, I could tell he was trying to believe his own words. When we pulled into Millbrook, I knew right away this wasn't like the towns I'd read about in books. There were no ice cream shops full of kids, no busy parks, no bakeries with warm steam rising from their chimneys. Just shuttered storefronts, moss-covered roofs, and old men on porch chairs staring at us like strangers. "This place looks deserted," Mom whispered. I sat up, curious. Millbrook looked like time had passed it by. Wooden houses sat still, walls cracked and peeling. Rusty signs swayed in the wind, everything was worn and so quiet. The Hartwell farm was about 3 miles out of town. As we turned onto the dirt road that led to the house, the air seemed to grow heavier. Back then, I couldn't name the feeling. Now I know it was the first time I sensed something wasn't right. The 2-story wooden house rose ahead, tall and quiet in the clearing. It wasn't falling apart, not exactly, but it hadn't been lived in for a long time. The porch roof leaned to one side. A few window boards hung loose like they had just finished gasping after a storm. I stepped out of the car, and something strange caught my eye. "Daddy, why do the trees look weird?" I asked, pointing to the edge of the property. Dad turned to look. At the border between our land and the woods beyond stood a row of tall oak trees, but instead of reaching skyward, their branches drooped down, bent like arms kneeling in prayer. Or bowing. "They're just old trees, sweetheart," Dad said. But I heard the hesitation in his voice. I nodded, but something in me squirmed. Those branches didn't look alive, they looked like they were standing guard. And from that moment on, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. We had come home, but it wasn't home the way I'd ever known it. Millbrook slowly swallowed time, and we, the ones returning from Chicago, began to feel it clearly after just 1 week. Dad got up early every morning. He walked around the house, checking the fences, brushing away the strange footprints that showed up at night. Mom tried to make the old wooden house more livable. She hung new curtains, changed the wallpaper, and placed a jar of dried flowers on the dining table, though her heart was always uneasy. As for me, I wandered in the yard, playing alone beneath the drooping trees. But no matter how much we tried to normalize things, this place refused to let us. On the very first morning after moving in, we found strange footprints around the house. They weren't human, but they weren't pet tracks either. Large, deep, clawed, like something crawling low to the ground, or stalking. Dad examined them and said, could be a coyote or a stray dog from the woods. Then he started reinforcing the fence, wrapping it with wire, adding more wooden stakes. Every day after that, he would get up early and erase the prints that reappeared overnight. But I noticed he always left 1 or 2 faint tracks behind, as if to let me know he was still watching, still in control. Or maybe he wanted me to believe he was. And then, on the 4th night, Mom was the first to speak out loud what I had already heard from the beginning. "Did you hear something last night?" she asked Dad, fingers slowly spinning her coffee cup, eyes fixed on the window. "What sound?" Dad replied, the town newspaper trembling slightly in his hand, like someone singing, very softly, but I swear it was there. I held my breath. I had heard it too. Each night that sound got closer. Not one voice, or rather, too many voices blending into one, murmuring like wind slipping through a crack, whispering as if the earth itself was singing. Dad said it might be the wind or oak leaves brushing against each other. But that night, I knew he had heard it too. The next morning, Dad went into town. He said he was getting a haircut, but I knew he was searching for answers. When he returned, he was unusually silent. After dinner, when Mom pressed him, he finally told us what happened. "Who did you talk to?" Mom asked. "Henry, the old barber at the end of the street. He recognized me the moment I walked in, said he was sorry to hear about my father." Dad paused. I sat a few feet away, playing with my doll, but I didn't miss a single word. I asked him about the farm, if anything strange had ever happened there. And he stopped cutting, looked at me through the mirror and said, "Some things in Millbrook are best left buried." Mom went silent, clenching her hands. I asked him what he meant, and that's when Henry started telling the story. In 1919, Millbrook had one of the harshest winters in over a century. According to him, the land our farm now sat on was once a Sauk tribal village. They had lived there for centuries and believed the oak forest was home to the spirits of their ancestors. They called that land Wakanda Oki, Dad said. It means the place where spirits return. I saw Mom shudder. They believed the souls of fallen warriors, especially those who died in anger in war, could never rest. They still had unfinished duties. By the end of 1919, the Sauk tribe abandoned the land after a string of strange events, unexpected deaths, disappearances, and the songs echoing from the woods every full moon. Before they left, they performed a sealing ritual, trapping the warrior spirits within the oak forest. But the ritual needed to be renewed every generation. Without it, what sleeps will awaken. I used to think kids had wild imaginations, but sometimes I wish mine had just imagined everything that happened next. That night, I was the first to see them. I woke up in the middle of the night because of a chill. Not the kind of chill from wind, but a cold that seeped into your bones, as if someone was whispering in your ear. Even though no one was there, I sat up, walked to the window, and gently pulled the curtain aside. In the distance, right at the edge of our garden where the old oaks stood, I saw them. Figures. They stood still, silent in the mist. Tall, thin, wearing white. None of them moved. But I knew, absolutely knew, they were all looking at me. "Mommy," I called out, my voice trembling. Mom woke up instantly. Dad rushed upstairs. I pointed outside, my hand shaking. By the oak trees, I saw them. Both of them looked out the window. At first they said nothing. Only the drooping silhouettes of the oak trees swayed under the silver moonlight. But then, I knew they saw what I did, shapes in the dark. Not exactly people, not just mist, something in between. Still, watching. Jesus Christ, Dad whispered. Maybe it's just fog, Mom said, but her voice no longer had its usual certainty. We stood there, the three of us, staring into the woods, and then one of the figures moved. It didn't walk. It glided, soft like wind, right above the ground, like it was floating. Then the others began to move, all of them, slowly, together. They were heading toward the house. We have to leave, Dad said, gripping my shoulder. We turned, rushing to go downstairs. But I glanced out the opposite window, the one facing the front yard, and then I froze. Daddy, I whispered. They're already here. The front yard was full of them, no longer distant. They stood just meters from our door, still, faint. But their eyes, if they had eyes, were all turned upward, toward us. Mom covered her mouth. Dad pulled me close, his hands ice cold. I had never seen my father afraid. But now he was trembling, and I knew without a doubt this was no child's imagination anymore. We didn't sleep that night. The figures vanished with the dawn, but the feeling of being watched stayed, as if eyes still lingered in the shadows cast through morning windows. Mom decided right away, we have to leave today. But Dad shook his head. We can't. All our money is tied to this place, and maybe there's still a rational explanation for everything. Mom stared at him like he'd lost his mind. A rational explanation for ghosts standing around our house all night? What are you talking about, Michael? He didn't answer, but I knew he wasn't sure of anything anymore. He was trying to be logical, but his eyes kept flicking to the window, toward the oaks bowing like mourners. That afternoon, Dad said he was going back to town. Not for a haircut this time. He needed answers. He planned to visit the library. The small brick building sat in the center of Millbrook, almost hidden by old elm trees. I went with him. Mom didn't object. She just said, "Don't be gone too long." The librarian was Martha Keene, a woman in her 70s, with silver hair and glasses on a chain. When Dad said his name, she tilted her head and stared for a long moment. "You're Edward Hartwell's son?" "Yes, I need to know the history of the farm. I think my family missed something." "For generations." Martha stayed silent for a few seconds, then slowly stood up. "Follow me." She led us to the farthest corner of the library, where dust blanketed the spines of forgotten books. She pulled out a weathered leather journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. "This is the diary of Reverend Samuel Morrison, Millbrook's first pastor. He lived from 1920 to 1925. What you're looking for might be in here." Dad opened the book, hands trembling. I stood beside him, reading along. October 15th, 1920. I made a mistake encouraging the Hartwell family to buy that land. The Sauk warned us, but we didn't listen. They called it Wakanda Oki, the place where spirits return, where the souls of fallen warriors return, thirsty for blood. Dad gripped the spine of the book tighter. Martha only nodded, slowly confirming it was all true. October 25th, 1920. Edward Hartwell came to see me. He said he heard singing in the woods, saw shapes between the trees. I told him it was probably his imagination, but deep down, I knew. The spirits were waking. October 30th, 1920. The Wilson family, neighbors to the Hartwells, died in the night. All 5. No signs of struggle, but red bruises around their necks as if squeezed by invisible hands. I had never seen my father afraid like he was after reading that journal. His hands still shook as he laid the book on the library counter. My dad, the man who had carried me through financial crises, hospital visits, and the grief of losing my grandfather, was now drenched in sweat because of words written by a long-dead pastor. Martha just stood there, watching him with a look I didn't understand then, but later I would. It was the look of someone who had seen too many young people give up and far too few brave enough to face what came next. "Now you know why I never let anyone read that," she said. "But you needed to understand what you're up against." Dad nodded slowly. "But my father lived there all his life. If the curse was so strong, why didn't anything happen? Martha sighed, pulling another notebook from the cabinet. Not a book, an old file copy. Medical records from 1955 to 1970. George Hartwell, your grandfather, came back in 1930, but he was never the same. Instead of leaving like his father, he chose to stay. She paused. And do you know the strange part? Dad said nothing. He found a way to live with them. According to the records, once a month, during the full moon, George would disappear into the woods. At first, people thought he was crazy or drunk, but the doctor noticed something odd. He always brought specific items: raw meat, sometimes animal blood, small personal objects tied with red string. And after that, all strange activity around the farm stopped. No more singing, no more shadowy figures. A deal had been made, Martha said. Not worship, a kind of offering to keep the boundary in place. I shivered. Did my dad know? My father asked. Edward grew up with the rituals, Martha nodded. To him, it was just a part of country life. But when your mother died in 1955, and died in a way the coroner couldn't explain, he realized the deal wasn't optional. We couldn't leave the farm. The car engine roared for just a few feet, then died, even though Dad had checked the fuel and engine earlier. The landline had no signal. The wire had been cut, clean, like someone had sliced through it with a knife. Mom tried the emergency radio, but there was only static. The house felt cut off from the world, like a dead island surrounded by forest, spirits, and a curse that refused to sleep. Dad held Grandpa's old shotgun standing by the living room window, as if a single bullet could stop what was coming. But I knew, if they got in, the gun wouldn't matter. I sat in Mom's arms, staring at the front door. From the depths of the dark, the shapes returned. First one, then three, then dozens. They stood outside, motionless, pale, cloaked in white, faceless, nameless, heavy and real, like flesh. Daddy, I asked, why do they want me? The question slipped out like breath. Silence followed, so heavy I could feel my heart pounding against my chest. Dad didn't answer, but I knew he was thinking about the journal, about the bridge. Near 11 p.m., the first sound hit. A window in the kitchen shattered, glass flying across the floor. But no one came in. Only a freezing wind swept inside, carrying the stench of rot and something burnt. Not mildew, but the choking smell of an unopened tomb. They were inside. I began to see them moving, corner to corner. Not human, not animal. Something in between. Their arms were long and bent, their legs twitched, their bodies twisted as if they were never meant for human spaces. They didn't walk, they slithered, like thick mist crawling across the floor. I couldn't look away. And then, I stood up. Mom grabbed me, but I wasn't myself anymore. I have to go with them, I heard myself say. But it wasn't my voice, it was lower, colder, hard like rotting wood, sharp like broken stone. Emma! Mom screamed, clutching my arm, but I tore free. Something inside me was pulling, driving me to the door. They were waiting. No! Dad shouted, throwing himself over me. I felt him shudder when he touched me, as if my skin was stone and my heart no longer beat. The whispers surged, from the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. No longer a few voices, but hundreds. All in unison. Give us the child. She is the bridge. She will set us free. Dad understood. I saw it in his eyes, no longer fear but realization. They didn't just want us dead. They wanted to live through me. A child. A soul untouched by the world. A pure gate. If they took me, they wouldn't stop in Millbrook. They would spread. To cities, to nations, to the world. Dad saw it, and he screamed, I'll do what you want. I'll perform the ritual. I'll be the guardian, but let my family go. I froze. The voices stopped. Only one remained. Not in unison, not loud, but deep, ancient, heavy as the earth. You don't understand, mortal. We've waited too long. It's time we were free, and the child is the key. I don't know what made me stop right before the door. Maybe it was Dad's arms holding me so tight, or maybe Just maybe, some tiny part of me still remained untouched, still mine. I stood there, frozen in the living room, my eyes still red, my lips whispering a language I didn't recognize. But I hadn't crossed the threshold yet. Not yet. "Emma, listen to Daddy," Dad whispered, his voice shaking but still hard as steel. I didn't reply, but deep down, I wished I could nod. He placed me into Mom's arms. She didn't say a word. She just held me tight, tears falling silently down her cheeks. Then Dad ran downstairs, to the basement. Mom trembled. I could feel the panic in her body, like a wire strung too tight. One wrong move and it would snap. But she didn't let go. A few moments later, Dad came back up, carrying a wooden chest I had never seen before. He placed it on the table. Inside were strange objects, arrows, a leather bracelet, a wooden mask carved with a twisted human face, and a small notebook, its pages yellowed with time. "It's from my father," Dad said. "He left it all behind and I never knew." He opened the notebook. Handwritten pages appeared, his father George Hartwell's handwriting as Dad had once described it. "The rituals weren't meant to please them," Dad read aloud. "They were meant to uphold the deal. We keep them here. They don't kill us." Then he paused. "But there's a way to end it all, if someone's brave enough to pay the price." He looked straight at Mom, at me. No one had to ask what the price was. The notebook contained detailed instructions for the final ritual. Not an offering of blood or meat, but a sacrifice of a living soul. Not death, but staying, becoming the next guardian. "Take Emma to the car," Dad said. "This time it'll start." "You can't," Mom whispered. "It's the only way. If I don't, they'll take her. They'll break the boundary. They'll get out." Tears streamed down her face. "I can't let you. You have to," he said. His voice softened. "I've lost too much already. Sarah, I won't lose both of you too." Dad hugged me one last time. I felt his lips on my forehead, cold, but his hands were still warm. And for the first time since everything began, I truly cried. Not from fear, but because I knew I was losing my father forever. He stood, took the mask, the ritual pouch, and the notebook. And without looking back, he walked out the door, to where they were waiting. I stood by the window, hidden behind the thin curtain, watching Dad's figure slowly vanish into the darkness. The wooden mask covered his face, strange and heartbreaking. He clutched the ritual pouch tightly, walking toward the oak grove, where the spirits floated among the branches, as if they'd been waiting all along. Mom scooped me up and ran to the car. For the first time in days, the engine started smoothly, as if some unseen hand had removed the final obstacle. I looked back one last time. Dad was kneeling among the oaks. The trees no longer drooped. They leaned toward him, as if bowing to welcome a new guardian. From a distance, I saw the spirits begin to swirl around him like a vortex. No longer hostile, no longer threatening. It was a sacred ceremony. Dad began to speak. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew they were ancient, learned from that notebook. The wind howled, a pale blue light crept from the earth, and the breath of both soil and spirit seemed to exhale together. Then, something strange happened. My mind went blank. My eyes opened wide. No more whispers, no more invisible eyes calling me in the night. Something like a thread that had been wrapped around my soul snapped. I collapsed in the yard, as if waking from a lifelong nightmare. "Emma," Mom screamed, lifting me. I opened my eyes, looked at her, looked around. No one. The spirits were gone. I turned back to the oak grove. Dad's silhouette was still there, kneeling, hands folded, head bowed. But he was no longer my father. His form blurred, as if he was becoming part of the mist, the earth, the ancient roots. The forest shivered, then fell completely still. Dad had become part of that land. Not just a guardian, but the symbol of sacrifice, of boundary, of a soul choosing peace for the world over freedom for himself. We left Millbrook that night. I don't remember the drive out of town. Mom cried the whole way, and I sat silently, my hands still warm. if it held a trace of his touch. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. We had survived, but a part of me had stayed in that forest. Forever. Millbrook, Iowa, fall 2003. I pulled over by the old road, staring through the windshield at the town that haunted my childhood. 20 years had passed. Now I'm Emma Morrison, a therapist in Denver, wife to a kind man, and mother to a 5-year-old boy. I have a family, a home, a life I once thought was lost forever after that fateful night. But today, I came back. Not because I wanted to, but because of a final promise. My mom, Sarah, passed away last month from cancer. In her final days, she told me everything, every secret she'd held back. "You have to go back," she whispered, her breath thin as smoke. "You have to make sure your father is still at peace." I understood. She wasn't talking about his body. She meant his spirit. The Hartwell farm still stands, abandoned, weeds waist-high, part of the roof collapsed, windows just empty frames. But the oaks remain, bending, watching, as if guarding a secret the wind dares not touch. I walked slowly toward the woods, a bouquet of white roses in hand, Dad's favorite. I stopped at the circle of trees, the place where 20 years ago he had knelt and never returned. "Daddy?" I called, soft as a falling leaf. The wind brushed my face. No ghosts, no lights, just a faint outline forming in the air, translucent, sorrowful. His face, still his, older, tired, but still my dad, the man who held me as the world fell apart. "You grew into a beautiful woman," he said, his voice like wind across dry bark, no longer alive, but full of love. "I miss you so much," I whispered, laying the roses at the base of the tree. "I miss you too," he smiled, "but I'm still here, for a reason. Some things were never meant to be set free." I swallowed my tears. "Do you regret it?" He looked at me a long time, then nodded, not to say yes, but to affirm his choice. "No, sweetheart," he said. "I saved the people I loved most. That's all that matters. I wanted to stay longer, but I knew I couldn't. I had a son waiting back in Denver, a 5-year-old boy with eyes just like his grandfather's. He knows nothing about Millbrook, about the farm, about the oak forest, and I'll keep it that way, as a gift. A forgetting guarded by a soul." Driving away from Millbrook, I didn't look back. I let my heart return instead. And through the autumn breeze drifting past the window, I heard a melody, soft and distant. Not the whispers of ghosts, but a father's lullaby for his daughter.
Emma Hartwell left Millbrook in 1983 when she was only 8 years old. And since then, no one has known where she went. The house is still there, standing silently at the end of a leaf-covered road. No one moved in, and no one dares to go near it after dark. But every year on the night of the October new moon, a faint light reappears in the attic window. And sometimes people still hear footsteps moving across the dust-covered floorboards. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If you'd like to hear more true stories like this one, feel free to leave a comment or share your thoughts down below. And if you're intrigued, consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss what comes next. Because sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that never truly end.